Moving toward regression or formlessness. How is your faith walk? In what direction are you moving? Are you unknowingly slipping into regression, walking in the ways of man, worldly ways? Or are you progressing toward formlessness in Yahusha, walking in covenant obedience? Formlessness can only be achieved in and through Yahusha HaMashiach, the light of the world, and our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. In James chapter 1, verses 13 through 17, let no one say when he is enticed, I am enticed by Elohim. For Elohim is not enticed by evil matters, and he entices no one. But each one is enticed when he is drawn away by his own desires and trapped. So it is our own desires, our emotions of covetousness that can entice us into the snare of regression. Desires that come from stinking thinking. It's essentially a horse without a rider. It's our emotions without thinking. It's those desirous emotions running wild. The believer is not thinking straight. Their IQ decreases dramatically. And at that moment, they do not have the mind of Yahusha, nor are they doing the will of the Father. They're incapable of doing that because they're so overwhelmed by desires and emotions. In verse 15, it says, then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, which equates to regression, when it has been accomplished, brings forth death. Do not go astray, my beloved brothers, because going astray is moving away from Yahweh, is it not? Going astray is regression, moving away. Just like the two kingdoms that we are studying in the book of Isaiah, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, eventually they both regressed. They both moved away. But every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change nor shadow of turning. This is formlessness. This is where we're headed. This is what we are returning to.
Be still, my beating heart. Do not be troubled. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night. Though thousands fall at your side, you will take shelter. will say of Yahweh, He is my refuge, my refuge. He will cover you, and under His wings you will find refuge. You tread on lions and snakes, and if you drink poison, it won't harm you. He will deliver you from the snare of the trapper and every pestilence in the darkness. In the noonday, I will say of Yahweh, He is my refuge, my refuge. He will cover you, and under His wings you will find refuge. He'll satisfy you with life and show you salvation. You will live every day in the shadow of Yahweh, the Most High, Most High, Most High. Because you know my name and cling to me in love, I will set you on high. I will deliver you. I will deliver you. You're my refuge, my
In our Isaiah study, last week we started into chapter 1 after the introduction. And I found that it is very important that we glean all that was shared in the opening segment of Isaiah chapter 1 by Matthew Nolan with Torah to the Tribes. And you can join those sessions as well by going to Torah to the Tribes YouTube channel or TorahToTheTribes.com. I will leave the links below in the description section. As we proceed, I want us to be mindful that salvation brings us out of the nations. Salvation brings us out of the nations. Salvation is the healing. But what are we going to do after that period of receiving Yahusha as our Savior? Are we now going to regress back to the ways of the nations? Let it not be.
And greetings to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. Thank you for joining us live this Shabbat as we embark on chapter 1 in the book of Isaiah, the 5th Hebrew gospel, Yeshayahu. Greet one another in the chat, and blessings upon you all scattered abroad and joining us here live. Let's dive right into chapter 1 of the book of Isaiah. In verse 2, it says, "Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for Yahweh has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knows its owner, and the donkey its master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people do not consider. Alas, O sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity." The identifier is am, my people Israel. That is the qualifier. And I'm reminded in the Brit Hadashah of a verse that is so similar to that. "For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle shall no wise pass from the Torah, till all be fulfilled." You see, if the Torah is done away with, then the restoration of Israel, the coming of Messiah, cannot happen. Just as the heavens and the earth are the two witnesses of Yahweh's judgment, and Yahusha, his subsequent salvation and healing of the exile. You see, Yahweh is showing us today in chapter 1 through the prophet Isaiah that the problem is my people Israel. That they're no longer acting like his people Israel. They have become alienated and more drawn to the nations, which then in turn will bring a siege upon Jerusalem and Judah, which will then cause them to become sick. And sickness is a euphemism for the exile. Thus, they will need to be healed. Therefore, Yahweh will send the great physician, the healer of my people, to heal the sickness, which means bring Israel back from the exile and back into the land. But if his people don't know they're his people, and they're still acting like the pagan nations, caught up in religion, and they think that there's something else, are they going to get properly healed? Because the sickness is the exile. And what keeps you in exile is an exile or slave mentality of being one with the exile, or one with the world. So the whole premise here is my people need to identify as my people, which is why each and every week I greet you. Greetings to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. I don't greet you to the Pentecostals and the Mennonites and the I don't greet you that way, because Yaakov, James, tells us in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, that there are 12 tribes scattered abroad. And for them to truly be healed, that happens when they accept Yahusha and realize that they are Israel. So this is kind of the subject matter that we're getting into right here in the first chapter. Because religion wants no judgment. And it wants the salvation, but it doesn't want the judgment. But you see, you have to have judgment so that you can really appreciate the salvation. Because salvation is what then brings you out of the exile, because that is the healing from the physician himself. The one which Yeshayahu, Isaiah, prophesies. Now, this is all about covenant. Judah had broken covenant, and therefore Jerusalem was about to be sieged by those in the north, the Assyrians and those coming down from the north. We know that being in covenant means that you have witnesses to that covenant. There has to be signatories on the covenant. It's a contract, and the witnesses are the heavens and the earth. Verse 2, the book of the covenant witnesses, because we're talking about the book of the covenant, not just the physical heaven and earth, but those who reside in the heavens and the earth. And who are those that reside in the heavens and the earth? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're witnesses to the covenant. They were on earth and they reside in the Shamayim, meaning Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1 speaks to this. The hall of faith. I love that chapter. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. What are they witnessing? They're witnessing your repentance, your salvation, your identification with their seed, which is why Paul calls you seed of Abraham, which means you are one of the 12 tribes, or you join the 12 tribes and you come back into covenant faithfulness as Israel together. That's the restoration of all Israel. Healness, being healed from your sickness, which is the exile, which is paganism, which is everything that you and I grew up in. Syncretism, religious syncretism is sickness because it keeps you in the exile. Think about this. The book of the covenant was made after the book of the law was imposed, and the covenant included both those present and those not present. In Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 14. The not present, rebellious, wicked generations that Isaiah was prophesying to. Because the book of the covenant was made, and then they went and broke it at the golden calf, and then was imposed the book of the law. But there were witnesses all the time to the covenant treaty and the covenant infraction. And those witnesses are the patriarchs and the heavens and the earth, because the patriarchs reside in both the heavens and the earth. I hope that makes sense. Look at verse 4. O sinful nation, a people loaded with iniquity. A zerah, there's that word, that means generations from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. A seed of evildoers. Children that are corrupt. We're talking generational iniquity. They have forsaken Yahweh. They have provoked the Kadosh One of Israel. It doesn't say they've provoked the Pope. It doesn't say they've provoked the Archbishop of Canterbury. We're not talking about the sect of the Church of England here. This is about Israel. Because if we don't identify as Israel, then we're still sick. We haven't been properly healed by the great physician. I did not come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, is what the Mashiach said. He didn't come for all of the denominations. He came but to the lost sheep. Now, the Shem Tov Matthew says the prostituting sheep of the house of Israel, because we've all been whoring around with papal gods. And this time of year, you see it as they go out into the forest and they cut down a tree and they drag it inside the house. The very things that the prophet Jeremiah told us not to do. And remember, Isaiah and Jeremiah were contemporaries of one another. So this was very prevalent. I wouldn't be surprised if they were trying to drag trees up through the streets of Jerusalem at this time also. Very interesting. From addressing his people personally as Israel, which is my people, Yahweh now addresses them impersonally. How would you like Yahweh to address you? Well, how would you like Yahweh to address you? Personally or impersonally? Would you like to be addressed as Israel, or would you like to be addressed as your denominational sect? Because that's what it's about. Because if he addresses you impersonally, then that's the section in Matthew chapter 7 where many say that they were doing this, that, and t'other, but he did not know you. That's impersonal. Personal means you've been healed of your sickness, that you've come back from the exile. And this is what we're about here at Torah to the Tribes. Being healed of our sicknesses and our infirmities. And that is about self-mastery. Overcoming sin, temptation, and the way that you used to live. This is what he wants, true repentance and restoration deep within.
Formlessness. In Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5, we read, "Before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. And before you came out of the womb, I did set you apart. I appointed you a prophet to the nations." We were once formless and clothed in light. He knew us in this formless state. He set us apart in this formless state. He has appointed us as prophets to the nations. Just like Isaiah, Hosea, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, when Israel had split and formed the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom, they were regressing. They weren't living under his covenant. At times they were, but they were regressing. That's why he wanted to awaken them. That's why he sent the prophets, because they were being led astray. They were adopting the ways of the world. Is that not what we're experiencing today? Are we not seeing regression, falling away, and adopting the ways of the world? Has he not sent each one of us from all 7 continents to share his word of prophecy to the nations? Does that not mean, doesn't that mean we are prophets? Does he not tell us in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, we are his witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea, in Samaria, and to the uttermost ends of the earth? Absolutely. History, biblical history, repeats itself. And we can glean so much from this study. His word is prophecy, and we are his witnesses. So in our Isaiah study with Torture Through the Tribes, each week we are looking at a theme of mastery. We want to learn from the strengths and failures of those that came before us. That's very important. But many in the traditional church, they forget about the first part of the book. They just focus on the last part of the book. But we need to know our biblical history. We need to learn from those failures of others in his word. Each week, we have been asked to ask ourselves how we would interpret the teaching, how we could apply the insights to our lives, and what patterns are present. See, you have to have history, don't you? Don't you have to have history before you can see the patterns? Do you see why the enemy doesn't want you to see the history so you don't see the patterns? So what patterns are present? And are those patterns positive, or are those patterns negative and they need to be broken? This week, we will look at the interpretation, the application, and the patterns of regression or formlessness. Which direction do we want to head into? So, are we walking in covenant obedience? Do we even know what being in covenant with him means? Or are we walking in worldly ways? This is important because one represents moving closer to formlessness. The other, walking in worldly ways, tells us we're in a regressive pattern. So to achieve formlessness, to interpret, to understand formlessness, we must walk in his covenant commands and wean ourselves from worldly regression promoted and ingrained in us through our generational upbringings, our worldly programming, and the pagan traditions of men. And we need to apply that interpretation to our lives. We must first know who we are. That's so important. If you don't know who you are, you're getting off on the wrong foot. We are Israel, born from above. Secondly, we must know that Yahusha ushered in the new blood-ratified covenant. Thirdly, we must know the four components of a blood-ratified covenant. There must be a proposal, there must be acceptance, there must be blood ratification, and a covenant confirming meal. In a perfect world, all four of these components are met in a marriage between a man and a woman. But we should also realize that the enemy is always ready to make his own counterfeit and evil blood ratified covenants. Fourth, we must know what saying yes to Yahusha's new covenant proposal means. And it means much more than just receiving salvation. Yes, that is a glorious beginning, but there's much more. It means a believer has read and understood the book of the covenant and covenant Torah, and knows the difference between covenant Torah and the book of the law. We have learned that his word is the law of notice. He has shown us what is pleasing to him and what is not. And that is extremely important. Let's look at John chapter 12, verse 47 and 48. Okay, focus on this. Focus on these scriptures right here. And if anyone hears my words, it's law of notice. If anyone hears my words, but does not watch over them, I do not judge him. For I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. He goes on to say, he who rejects me and does not receive my words has one who judges him. And who is that? What is that? The word. The word that I have spoken shall judge him in the last day. It is the word that he has spoken. That is what will judge us in the last day, because that is his law of notice. Let's say that verse again. He who rejects me, Yahusha HaMashiach, and does not receive my words has one who judges him. The word that I have spoken shall judge him in the last day. But make no mistake, Satan wants to snare people into his kingdom of evil, of regression, and in unholy alliances. I would like to explain how many believers do not even understand how they are entering into a blood-ratified covenant with the enemy. Such things done in ignorance is one thing. We've all been there, done that. But it is a different matter once you know what the four elements of a blood-ratified covenant are, and look to see if those elements are present for good or for evil. Remember, the enemy comes as an angel of light and works through his minions every day, programming the masses. Come on in, he says. This is just a holiday, a time for the family to get together. Or maybe it is related to sports, you know, the sports mania with a halftime satanic ritual. The patterns we practice matter. Have you ever noted what days of the year are satanic holidays? Have you ever Googled it? And also how they include the traditional holidays that so many traditional churchgoers celebrate? Traditional holidays have satanic roots, including birthdays. On the other hand, Yahweh's biblical feasts are our very wedding rehearsals with our groom. Question: what pattern do you follow? It's not real complicated. What pattern do you follow? People get sucked into participating in blood-ratified covenants, even on traditional or non-traditional satanic holidays. It may even just be a date with a numeric significance unbeknown to the naive. Often it will be a chosen date in which many times the naive party is unaware. It is always presented as a date that seems to be best for all parties. Yet there usually seems like there is something amiss. Something is off. Something is telling you there's something wrong. You may not be able to put your finger on it, but his Ruach HaKodesh is holding you back for some reason, and you wrestle with it. You try to figure it out. And when this happens, take pause. Life events, for instance, are many times dates chosen or manipulated by the enemy to fall on a satanic special date or number. Look over your past life events: weddings, births, funerals, memorials, etc. Do you see a pattern manipulated by the enemy? Do you see the four elements? Was a date, was a proposal involved and or manipulated? Did you accept that due to their reasoning, which seemed rather logical? It could have been. Was there a blood ratification or a sexual ratification, unbeknownst to you? Was there a gathering for food or meal afterwards? This would be their covenant confirming meal. Keep in mind, you did accept. Your awareness of such to them is trivial. Your full awareness of such to them is trivial because they want your energy. They mainly want your participation and your energy. Have you accepted the proposal dates of man-made traditional holidays? Have you accepted their reasoning? Well, we don't really know exactly what day Yahusha was born, but we can all agree on celebrating on this date. Really? Where is that in his word? Are you aware that there's blood ratifications and sexual ratifications taking place behind the scenes, whether you're aware of it or not? Are these so-called good, so-called family gatherings on these traditional holidays, are they not a covenant confirming meal? Is the enemy sitting in the back seat laughing himself silly? I mean, just a few examples out of these 5 listed to the right. There you have Valentine's Day, based on the Roman festival of the same name, Lupercalia, falls on February 15th. In keeping with the ancient traditions, February 13th and 14th are observed as feast days leading up to the actual holiday. Halloween, that's pretty obvious. Doesn't matter if you change the name to trunk or treat, traditional churches, that doesn't matter. And I'm not condemning, I want to convict us of the schemes of Satan, because we were all sucked into such things at one point in time, or many of us, or most of us. But I'm sharing this to help awaken Israel, to see, number one, that you are Israel and that you really have nothing in common with these holidays of the world, of the nations. And what's that? December 25th, Sol Invictus. So if you were to Google, this is just one site, and I just listed up here some of those that we may be more familiar with, not going to go over each one. But these are, in essence, blood ratified covenants with the enemy, because this world proposes to you to celebrate this day. You can accept it or reject it. There's blood ratification or sexual ratification in the background, whether you know about it or not. Now you know about it. And there's a covenant confirming meal on these holidays. So we have New Year's Day. We have the spring equinox. We have Shoftide, 3 days before Ash Wednesday. which is a witch Sabbath. Even less the traditional church settings of Good Fridays. Easter Eve, Ishtar, the fertility goddess, that's where it got its name, is it not? Easter, Ishtar? What type of ritual is that? That's a blood ritual. May involve human sacrifice, male or female adult. Or May 1, Beltane, Walpurgis Day, May Day, we know it as, was with the Ashtoreth pole. Druid Fire Festival, Coven initiations. These are not of Yahweh. These are not his feast days. So we can go on. June 21st, summer solstice. And some of these dates vary depending on the year, but it involves orgies. And simply, pretty much the rest of the year from October 13th through December 25th, fall in that same worldly ways of the nations. The box at the bottom reads, the highest ritual holiday is the member's birthday. It usually involves a member of a victim of the member's choice and someone in authority, usually the coven's leader. B, the 1st and 3rd of every month. Put 1 and 3 together and it makes 13. Though ritual worship can occur at any time, frequently coinciding with times of stress. C, all Friday the 13th are high satanic days. D, all full moon nights provide reason for major occult activity because it's easiest to move around without difficulty and without being detected. E, Holy Week, as is celebrated in the traditional church settings as Palm Sunday, to Ishtar Easter Sunday. Some groups are thought to sacrifice, cook, and eat a human baby on Ishtar Sunday. What kingdom pattern, I ask, are you following? There are only 2 kingdoms, the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of hell. You see, in the first Exodus, Yahweh proposed to his people Israel at Mount Sinai in Exodus 19, verse 4 through 6. They accepted his proposal, Exodus 19 and 24. There was a blood ratification in Exodus 24, verse 8, and a covenant confirming meal in Exodus 24, verse 9 through 11. However, in Exodus 32, while Moses was up on the mount, while he had elevated himself as he had ascended up the mount, as he was drawing closer to Yahweh, the people below were sinning. They were regressing with the sin of the golden calf. They were performing the pagan worship of the nation people and the pagan practices. Sound familiar? Remember the dates we just looked at? There is no difference whether you set up a golden calf or an obelisk Christmas tree with gold ornaments or an Astaroth maypole. What part of pagan do we not understand? What part of satanic orgies and sacrificial deaths taking place on those dates do we not understand? Why would a true believer not come out of such and instead observe Yahweh's biblical feast days? And most importantly, why would parents and grandparents not want to draw them away from such instead of feeding them into the lies and the ways of the world? Because don't forget, You've got to lie about the guy in the red suit. You've got to lie about the guy in the Easter bunny outfit. This is a chart that I've used to help people really grasp this, because this is my desire. Once I understood this, once this was shared through Torah to the tribes and explained on how to rightly divide his word of truth, once that veil of deception was lifted off of me from the traditional church, and once I understood this simple graphic, his word became so much more alive to me. It changed everything for the better. So this, from Genesis to the end of the book, Revelation, into our everlasting life with Yahusha HaMashiach, this is it. We see the promise given to Abraham in Genesis 12, verse 1 through 3. We see Melchizedek, the king of Salem and priest to the Most High Elohim, come out and blesses Abraham. And we know Yahusha HaMashiach is the Melchizedek. And this was the first time to offer bread and wine, the covenant, right? And that's recorded in Genesis 14, verse 17 through 20, and Hebrews chapter 7, verse 1 through 10. But then later on, Abraham wanted to know, how will I know? I mean, in Genesis 12, it was an unconditional promise. Yahweh could swear by no other higher than himself. It was unconditional. But human nature, Abraham questioned, how will I know? Therefore, Yahusha gave him a guaranteed promise and had him flay the animals. And he saw the burning torch and the fiery oven pass through the pieces. That was Yahusha. Abraham saw his day, the day that Yahusha would choose to lay down his life and take it back up again. Abraham saw his day. He was alert. He wasn't sleeping. He saw. And because of this guaranteed promise came a death penalty clause with the promise. If the covenant was broken, someone would have to die. But Yahusha had already determined it would be him. It would be him. So the promise comes to fruition when Moses leads the people out of Egypt, leads Israel out of Egypt, Moses and Aaron, and they go to Mount Sinai. And Moses ascends up the mountain to receive the book of the covenant, our marriage ketuvah, our marriage covenant. That's what he went up the mount to get. And the book of the covenant, our marriage ketuvah, is found in Exodus 19:5 through Exodus 24:11. His royal Torah exists from Genesis 1:1 all the way to Exodus 24:11, because it began with the preachers of righteousness, Melchizedek priestly order, the righteous lineage from the very beginning of time, the implementation of Yahweh's plan to save us, the righteous lineage leading to Yahusha through his stepfather, Joseph, from the tribe of Judah. But while Moses was up on the mount, while he was ascending, while he was being faithful to Yahweh, the people were down below, sinning with the golden calf, regressing back to the pagan traditions they had learned. And they even sucked Aaron into helping them make that golden calf. Because of that, 3,000 died. And because of that, they would no longer be a kingdom of priests, plural, after the order of Melchizedek. No, they would be a nation with a priest. And they had broken the covenant. And to spare their very lives, Moses interceded, and Yahweh gave them an imposed book of the law, a tutor, a schoolmaster, a strict schoolmaster. It had blessings and it had curses. If you failed to be obedient to this remedial book of the law, it could cost you your very life. And the Aaronic Levitical priesthood would be the one implementing it. And therefore, the Melchizedek priesthood became denigrated because of their sin of the golden calf. They would be under the book of the law, and the Aaronic Levitical priestly order would be the ones that would implement it. And that would remain in place until, that's a huge word, until Yahusha could come and institute, bring in the new covenant confirming Melchizedek gospel message. And once again, elevate the Melchizedek priesthood back to its reigning position as Yahusha HaMashiach, as our high priest after the order of Melchizedek, who would oversee his own crucifixion and be seated at the right hand of the Father. And he would make us a kingdom of priests out of every tongue, tribe, people, and nation, including the tribe of Levi. And he would make full atonement on the heavenly altar. And he would make full atonement for not only us, but the land and all creation. He fulfilled the death penalty of Genesis 15 that connects us back to the promise of Abraham, because once we're in him, in Yahusha, we are the seed of Abraham. Israel are those born from above. He was the guaranteed promise fulfilled at the sacrificial, as the sacrificial lamb of Yahweh. And what happened after that? 3,000 were saved. What happened after the sin of the golden calf? 3,000 had died. Powerful. And that's all of it in a nutshell. But what Matthew shared just in those opening statements, salvation has healed us, brought us out of the exile. And we entered through the blood of Yahusha into a covenant relationship with him. We are Israel, born from above. It's no longer we that live, but he that lives in us and through us. And therefore, he has cloaked us with his righteousness. He has cloaked us with deliverance. He has cloaked us with light. And because of that, we take on his formlessness. He manifests to us. We know he's there in his formless state, but others do not, because he doesn't live in them and through them. But what did the enemy do? What did the enemy do? What pattern did the enemy repeat? Look at it. Look at it. As soon as a believer receives Yahusha HaMashiach, They should have been taught that they were now Israel, and proceeded into drawing closer and closer to his light of formlessness. But no, that's not what the enemy wanted. Oh yeah. They have the traditional churches with their obelisk steeples. They have that. They have a form of godliness, but they deny the power therein. No, and they do preach salvation in Jesus, the Messiah, which we know as Yahusha HaMashiach. They do have that form of godliness, but they don't tell you who you really are. Maybe they don't even know. Maybe they're doing it knowingly or unknowingly. I don't know. And instead, they substitute it with their denomination. Oh, you're Baptist. Oh, you're Catholic. Or you're a Buddhist. Or you practice Islam. They give you a denominational identity or a religious identity. But they don't tell you you're Israel. No, they're looking at Israel today that's in the Middle East. No, Israel, the true Israel, are those that are born from above. So the enemy has already infiltrated the traditional churches, and they're moving his people, and Yahweh doesn't like this at all. They're moving his people to regression, to the ways of the nation people. To celebrate golden calves, and not celebrate his feast days. He has his feast days, and he meets with us every Shabbat. These are our wedding rehearsals. But the majority of believers that thought they were entering and getting closer to him are actually regressing because they haven't taken pause to see exactly where they are. Just look at this. Look at this. The enemy played the same trick on Israel out of Egypt. After accepting the covenant, did they not accept the covenant in Exodus 19, 4, 5, and 6? Did they not? He wanted to make, this was their marriage proposal from Yahweh. He wanted to make them a kingdom of priests, a set apart people. And they said, yes, all that Yahweh has said, we will do. They were so happy. They were elated. They received it. They heard it. Moses reads it in Exodus 24, and there was blood ratification, and there was a covenant confirming meal. Hallelujah. But while Moses was receiving that from Yahweh on the mount, the enemy enticed the people below to worship in the ways of the nation people. So here we have, boom, the covenant. It's a blood ratified covenant. That means you cannot add to it or take away from it. It had a proposal. The people accepted. Blood ratification, covenant confirming meal. And where were the people enticed to go after that? To the sin of the golden calf, to the ways of the world. And what happens over here on the end of this timeline? What happens? Same thing. Yahusha once again proposes to his people. We can accept it or reject it. It's blood ratified by his own precious blood. And we take the covenant confirming meal of the Passover. And boom, what does the enemy want to do? right after the new covenant, what does the enemy do? It's the same pattern. But if you don't read the first of the book, you're not going to see that pattern. No, because that's in what people refer to as the Old Testament. But it's the same pattern. Proposal, acceptance, blood ratification, and covenant confirming meal. Which would mean that we have just become part of Israel. And we have become a kingdom of priests from every tongue, tribe, people, and nation. But no, the traditional church settings and the religions of men don't tell you that. They steal that identity of you being Israel, and they connect it to denominations, or they connect it to religions, and they connect it to the ways of the world, and they connect it to worldly holidays, and they are regressing true believers to the ways of the nation people. Wow, powerful. Let's listen to this 5-minute clip.
As opposed to Acts chapter 11, verse 26, that communicates an alienated state. Acts 11, verse 26. And the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. Now, this is the word kretin. Kretin. In the Greek, it's Christianos. This was the Mandean deity of the Son, Christ Helios. The Mandean deity of the Son, Christ Helios. The Alexandrian Osiris was Christos. People don't realize this. An alienated state. The Romans inherited the way the Persians worshipped the sun under the title Christos Mithras. Very appropriate teaching for this time of year, where Christos took the Roman interpretation of meaning something good, something pure, something sacred, and something holy. So the Romans then interpreted this God as meaning something good, pure, sacred, and holy. And then they put that title on the disciples who they thought were good, pure, sacred, and holy people. Can you see? But is it an alienated term, or is it a healing term? It's an alienated term that we have all labeled ourselves with, which keeps us in an alienated, sick state. And people will go, well, Christian is in the Bible. It's in Acts chapter 11, verse 26. They were first called Christians in Antioch. But they don't stop to go, well, why? Well, why were they called Christians? And what does Christos mean? Well, it's the word kretin, which is where we get the Greek word Christianos, which was a Mandean deity of the sun Christ Helios, which was down in Alexandria, was Osiris, was Christos, and then the Romans, they interpreted this as something good, something sacred, as something holy, and they put that label on a group of people that were doing good, sacred, holy things. But that doesn't make it right. And that certainly doesn't mean that I should identify with it. I'm not a bloody Roman. And I'm not in an alienated state. How many of us accept these labels that they put on us to try and keep us sick and alienated? Instead of being a multi-ethnic tribe of Israel, all 12 tribes that left Egypt, a mixed multitude coming together for healing under the love, mercy, and compassion of Yahweh, that there is one law for the homeborn and the foreigner and the stranger, that we are all one in Yahweh. That's healing. That's healing from the exile. Anything else is paganism, sickness, in an alienated state. Isaiah truly wants to show you Yahusha, because otherwise we'll end up under a siege mentality. Your mind will become besieged with everything that they're trying to pigeonhole you with. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. That's an alienated state. You'll be alienated from the true essence of being born again. Alienated from a true essence of coming into self-mastery. Because if you wrongly misidentify, then everything else from that point on is going to be corrupt. Am I right or am I wrong? You have to build a strong foundation, and that is identifying truly as Israel. All that to say this: we have inherited a term meaning alienated state from Israel. And I don't want to be alienated from Israel. And you certainly don't, because you keep tuning in every week and accepting the greeting to all 12 tribes scattered abroad. An alienated state means a term widely used by pagan worshippers. It's universal, which is where we get the term Catholic. It means universal. Catholic means a universal alienated state from Israel.
Hebrews chapter 7. Truly then, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people were given the Torah, the book of the law. That was the imposed book of the law to spare their very lives, and the Levitical priesthood was implemented to administer the book of the law. Why was there still need for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek and not be called according to the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed, of necessity there takes place a change of law also. And it is even footnoted there, from Melchizedek to Aaron. And when Yahusha came, the change took place from Aaron to Melchizedek, the Melchizedek. For he of whom this is said belongs to another tribe, from which no one had attended at the slaughter place. For it is perfectly clear that our master arose from Yehudah, a tribe about which Moses never spoke of concerning priesthood. And this is clearer still, if another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become not according to the Torah of fleshly command, referring to the book of the law, but according to the power of an endless life, formlessness. For he does witness, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Psalm 110, verse 4. For there is indeed a setting aside of the former command, which is footnoted, former Levitical command, meaning book of the law, because of its weakness and unprofitableness. For the Torah, again footnoted, Levitical Torah, book of the law, perfected not, but the bringing in of a better expectation through which we draw near to Elohim. We draw near to Elohim. And it was not without an oath, for they indeed became priests without an oath. But he, Yahusha, became priest with an oath by him who said to him, Yahweh has sworn and shall not regret. You are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. He is our high priest. 1 Peter chapter 2. Having put aside then all evil and all deceit and hypocrisies and envyings and all evil words, as newborn babes desire the unadulterated milk of the word, in order that you grow by it, that you ascend to self-mastery in his light, in him and through him, not believing what the traditions of men tell you, because they have adulterated his word. Sad, but true. You, each of us, are responsible for going back to his word to search the scriptures and see if these things be so, because we are guided into all truth by his Ruach, not me, not any other teacher, but by his word. Verse 3, if indeed you have tasted that the master is good, drawing near to him a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by Elohim and precious, you also, as living stones, are being built up a spiritual house, a set-apart priesthood, to offer up spiritual slaughter offerings acceptable to Elohim through Yahusha Messiah. Because we no longer do blood sacrifices, the new covenant ushered in spiritual slaughters, spiritual sacrifices, if you will. Because Yahusha laid down his life, shed his blood once and for all. But it is contained in the scripture, see, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, chosen, precious, and he who believes on him, Yahusha, shall by no means be put to shame. This preciousness then is for you who believe, but to those who are disobedient, see, if you're disobedient to his covenant commands, if you're disobedient to the law of notice, it's not going to be me or somebody else judging you. We just read those verses that it's going to be the word, the law of notice, that judges a person. Do you want to be judged by the law of notice without being washed by the blood of the Lamb? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling, and a rock that makes for falling. A stone of stumbling, a stone of regression, a rock of regression that makes for falling, because they have not read his word by being led by the Ruach HaKodesh. They have not devoted that time to seek those truths. So a stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling, who stumble because they are disobedient to what? To the word, his law of notice, to which they also were appointed. And the enemy has done so much deception within the traditional church setting and man-made religions. It takes a while to comprehend these things and to come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins and her plagues. So we are not only Israel born from above, we are the living stones making up Jerusalem from above, his very bride. You know, SA10 duplicates everything. There's two Jerusalems, a location in the Middle East, and the Jerusalem, his bride, that will be descending from above. There's two women in the wilderness, one in Revelation 12, one in Revelation 17. So don't get confused when everything is duplicated. You just have to know the original. In Revelation 21, verse 9 through 12, and one of the seven messengers who held the seven bowls filled with the seven last plagues came to me and spoke with me, saying, come, I shall show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the set apart Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from Elohim, having the esteem of Elohim. And her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. kind of has a formless description, does it not? And having a great and high wall, having 12 gates, and at the gates 12 messengers, and names written on them, which are those of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a kingly Melchizedek royal priesthood, a set apart nation, a people for a possession, that you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but now the people of Elohim, who had not obtained compassion, but now obtained compassion. Beloved ones, I appeal to you as sojourners and pilgrims to abstain from fleshly lusts, which battle against the soul, the being, having your behavior among the nations, not blend and synchronize with the nations, having your behavior among the nations good, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, let them, by observing your good works, esteem Elohim in a day of visitation. So the question is, who are you joined to? And are there pigs in your parlor? In the book, Pigs in the Parlor by Frank Hammond and Ida Mae Hammond, which is a handbook for deliverance from demons and spiritual oppression, they asked a question. What would you do if a herd of filthy pigs came into your parlor and began to make themselves at home? You would drive them out as quickly and unceremoniously as possible. And this is to be our attitude toward demon spirits. As soon as they are discovered, they are to be driven out. So what covenants, what unholy alliances, what acts of regression have you entered into, either knowingly or unknowingly? Are there signs in your life, or maybe right now in your home, an obelisk Christmas tree with lights and ornaments and all that stuff? Are there signs in your life and in your home of such acts of regression taking form and moving you away from formlessness? Are they manifesting in your house? Are they around your children? If so, what steps can you take to overcome and stop the regression and move in the opposite direction to formlessness? What did the prodigal son do in Luke chapter 15? And surely we know that this parable is speaking to each of us individually before and after we said yes to Yahusha's proposal. Because after we say yes, Yahusha sets us free to begin our sanctification journey toward him, not away from him, but toward him, toward our groom. Don't we want to know everything we can about our groom? Luke chapter 15, verse 15, and he went and joined himself to one of the citizens of that country. Oh, so he joined himself to a nation people. And he sent him to his fields to feed pigs. There's some red flags going up here. And he was longing to fill his stomach with the pods which the pigs were eating, and no one gave to him. No, there's no honor among thieves. There's no honor among those in the kingdom of evil. His kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, is life. There's no coincidence that evil spelled backwards is live. Yahusha is totally opposite than what the evil is in the nation world and people and in Satan. Yahusha is life, and life more abundantly. There's no death in him. He holds the keys, and he holds the keys to Sheol too. But the prodigal son, but having come to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I am perishing with hunger? So having risen, having come to himself, having his thinking click back in, having started to take control of his emotions, the horse and the rider, he said, I shall go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against the heaven and before you. He was repenting. And I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And having risen, he went to his father. And while he was still a long way off, all you have to do is start in that direction. Just start in that direction after you repent. Yahweh is going to come to you. The prodigal son's father saw him and was moved with compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. So what did the prodigal son do? 1, he came out of that unholy alliance that he had joined himself to, a citizen of the nation people. And he came out of that act of regression. Secondly, he aligned his thoughts, the rider on the horse. He aligned his thoughts with Yahweh's word, his law of notice. He arose and set himself apart from that association, as we too can arise and set ourselves and our family apart from such connections. He repented. That means he changed directions. He did a 180. He did an about face. That's what it will take if you find yourself in a regressive mode that you were totally unaware of because you were sucked in, like many of us were. Return to Yahweh. That is the answer. I'll be reading Jeremiah chapter 4. If you do return, O Israel, declares Yahweh, return to me. And if you remove your abominations from my presence and cease straying, and shall swear as Yahweh lives in truth, in right ruling, and in righteousness, then nations shall bless themselves in him, and they shall boast in him. For this is what Yahweh said to the men of Judah and Jerusalem: break up your tillable ground, and do not sow among thorns. Circumcise yourself unto Yahweh, and take away the foreskins of your hearts. You men of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, lest my wrath come forth like fire and burn with none to quench it, because of the evil of your deeds. And of course, this will replay out in the end of days, in the book of Revelation. His wrath will come. Verse 5, declare in Judah, and let it be heard in Jerusalem, and say, blow a shofar in the land, cry aloud and say, gather yourselves, and let us go into the walled city. Lift up the banner toward Zion, be strong, do not stand still, for I am bringing evil from the north and great destruction. This is our wake-up call. A lion has come up from his bush, and the destroyer of nations is on his way. He has set out from his place to make your land a ruin. Your cities are laid waste, without inhabitant. For this, gird yourself with sackcloth, lament and wail, for the burning displeasure of Yahweh has not turned back from us. And in that day it shall be, declared Yahweh, that the heart of the sovereign shall perish, and the heart of the heads and the priests shall be astonished, and the prophets wonder. Then I said, Master Yahweh, truly you have greatly deceived this people and Jerusalem, saying, peace is for you, whereas the sword reaches to the heart. At that time, it shall be said to this people and to Jerusalem, a scorching wind of the bare heights blows in the wilderness toward the daughter of my people, not to fan or to cleanse, a wind too strong. For this shall come for me. Now it is I who speak judgments against them. See, he comes up like clouds, and his chariots like a whirlwind. His horses shall be swifter than eagles. Woe to us, for we shall be ravaged. O Jerusalem, wash your heart from evil and be saved. Till when would your wicked thoughts remain within you? For a voice is declaring from Dan and is proclaiming trouble from Mount Ephraim. Announce to the nations, look, proclaim against Jerusalem that besiegers are coming from a distant land, and raise their voice against the cities of Judah. Like keepers of a field, they are against her all around, because she has rebelled against me, declares Yahweh. Your ways and your deeds have brought this upon you. This is your evil because it is bitter, because it has reached into your heart. Oh, my inward parts, I am in pain. Oh, the walls of my heart pounds in me. I am not silent, for you have heard. Oh, my being, a voice of a shofar, a shout of battle. Destruction upon destruction is cried, for all the land is ravaged. Suddenly my tents are ravaged, my curtains in a moment. How long shall I see a banner and hear a voice of a shofar? For my people are foolish. They have not known me. They are stupid children, and they have no understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good, they have no knowledge. I looked at the earth and saw it was formless and empty, and the heavens, they had no light. I looked at the mountains and saw they shook, and all the hills were swaying. I looked and saw there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens had fled. I looked and saw the garden land was a wilderness, and all its cities were broken down at the presence of Yahweh by his burning displeasure. For thus said Yahweh, all the earth shall be a ruin, and I shall not make a complete end. On account of this, let the earth mourn and the heavens above be gone, because I have spoken, because I have proposed, and shall not relent, nor do I turn back from it. All the city is fleeing from the noise of the horsemen and bowmen. They shall go into bushes and climb up on the rocks. All the city is forsaken, and no one is dwelling in it. And when you are ravaged, what would you do? Though you put on crimson, though you adorn yourself with ornaments of gold, though you enlarge your eyes with paint, you beautify yourself in vain. Your lovers despise you, they seek your life. For I have heard a voice as of a woman in labor, the distress as of her who brings forth her first child, the voice of the daughter of Zion. She bewails herself. She spreads out her hands, saying, woe to me, for my being faints because of her killers. Satan's road of regression. It's disguised, all right. It's disguised as a road of light. It's disguised being cloaked as an angel of light. Rulers and prophets denounce. Micah 3. Then I said, hear now, O heads of Yaakov, and you rulers of the house of Israel. Should you not know right ruling? You who are hating good and loving evil, tearing away the skin from my people and the flesh from their bones, and who have eaten the flesh of my people and stripped off their skin and have broken their bones and have cut it up as into a pot like flesh in the cooking pot. Therefore, when they cry to Yahweh, he does not answer them and hides his face from them at that time, as they have made their deeds evil. Thus said Yahweh concerning the prophets who lead my people astray, who are biting with their teeth and have called out peace. They even set apart a battle against him who does not give for their mouths. Therefore it shall be night to you without vision, and darkness to you without divination. The sun shall go down on the prophets, and the day shall be dark for them. Micah 3:7-12. And the seers shall be ashamed, and the diviners embarrassed, and they shall all cover their lips, for there is no answer, O Elohim. But truly I am filled with power, with the spirit of Yahweh, and with right ruling, and with might, to declare to Jacob, Yaakov, his transgression, and to Israel his sin, just like we are doing today. We are his modern day voice. We are his prophets. We are his witnesses. We are out sending our voice out, his voice speaking in us and through us to the nations on all 7 continents. Hear this, please, you heads of the house of Yaakov and you rulers of the house of Israel who despise right ruling and distort all that is straight, those building up Zion with bloodshed and Jerusalem with unrighteousness. Her heads judge for a bribe, her priests teach for pay, and her prophets divine for a price. Yet they lean on Yahweh and say, is not Yahweh in our midst? Evil does not come upon us. Therefore, because of you, Zion is plowed like a field, and Jerusalem becomes heaps, and the mountain of the house like a wooden height. Second Thessalonians 2:3-5. Let no one, please, let no one deceive you in any way. Yahweh doesn't want us to be deceived. Yahweh doesn't want us to be led astray. We are his sheep. We hear his voice. Make sure you're listening to his voice and not the voice of the enemy. His voice is in his word. Search the scriptures. Hear his voice. He will lead and guide you. He's not a hireling. He is a good shepherd. He loves you. Let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first, and the man of lawlessness is to be revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worshipped, so that he sits as Elohim in the dwelling place of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. Another counterfeit. Do you not remember that I told you this while I was still with you? Regression moves a person, a believer, into lawlessness, and it brings manifestations of sin. Formlessness brings shalom, of set apartness, clothed in his light without shadow of turning. We've all heard the example of if you have a candle and you light it, And then if you shine a light against that candle, you'll see the candle shadow, but you will not see the light. It's a formlessness, if you will. Manifestations of regressive sin equals emotions or desires without proper thinking, without aligning a person's thoughts with his law of notice, and they are led into sin. It's a regression. Formlessness is walking in his light, his law of notice. Now, emotions are present, but they're controlled. So the horse is present. There's nothing wrong with our emotions if they are controlled by our thoughts. And if we have the thoughts and thinking, the mind of Yahusha. So emotions are present, but controlled within his law of notice. Example, Paul was zealous. He was passionate for Yahweh. And Yahweh's word says, be angry and sin not. There is a way to be angry and not sin. Yahusha even turned over the tables of the money changers and sellers of doves and declared his father's house was to be a house of prayer. But when those emotions and desires are just running rampant and there's no rider with the submission of their thoughts to Yahusha, that's not good. Then you end up manifesting evil and sin. So we are to walk in his royal book of the covenant. And that's why I wanted to go over this chart that we went over earlier. It's a snapshot. I pray it is beneficial. The scriptures are there that you can look up on your own. And we see that both the original marriage covenant that was broken in Exodus 19:5 through 24:11, we know that that was blood ratified, and it had the 4 elements, as well as the new covenant confirming gospel that Yahusha HaMashiach, our high priest after the order of Melchizedek, ushered in and once again elevated the Melchizedek priesthood back to its reigning position. But when we do not stay within his law of notice, when we regress and turn back and follow the ways of the world and join ourselves to the nation people, that's committing adultery. That's committing adultery. And I pray this has made it more clear to people that may have not connected all these dots, like many of us had not connected all these dots. So that book of the law in this portion that extended from Exodus 24, verse 12, through Deuteronomy and into the beginning of Joshua was the layout of the book of the law. It was a tutor, it was a schoolmaster, it was a prosthesis, a crutch that Israel could follow, being implemented by the Aaronic Levitical priesthood until Yahusha would come. And they were disobedient. Though Yahweh sent them prophet after prophet after prophet to the southern kingdom, to the northern kingdom, they rebelled, and the northern kingdom was exiled to Assyria. And Judah, the southern kingdom, was exiled to Babylon. And even though the southern kingdom was allowed to return for a time period, eventually all 12 tribes were scattered abroad. Scattered. And that's where we are right here. We were all scattered abroad on all 7 continents. And the only way he could take us back after he divorced Israel and Judah was burned and destroyed, and Judah became more wicked than their sister Israel, Ephraim. The only way he could take us back and not break his word was to lay down his life and take it back up again. And by doing so, he could once again propose to us. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? Now he's fulfilled the death penalty of Genesis 15. He's connected us back to the promise and his proposal. We all have that opportunity to receive his proposal, ratified by his blood, and participate in that covenant confirming meal. So this week was the theme of mastery, was overcoming regression and moving into ascended self-mastery of formlessness in Yahusha HaMashiach, the light of the world. So in this session, we saw steps we could take in overcoming regression and how we can move toward and into ascended self-mastery of formlessness. We learned for the first time, for some of us, and it was a review for others, the 4 elements of a blood-ratified covenant. And we realized that Satan counterfeits the same elements, but for evil. We understand that in Genesis 15, upon Abraham's request for a guarantee of his covenant, Yahweh had Abraham flay the animals, and a flaming torch and a burning oven, Yahusha, passed through the pieces, and Abraham saw his day when Yahusha would choose to lay down his life and take it back up again. This conditional arm of death became active when the covenant was broken with the sin of the golden calf. After the covenant was broken, because of that flaying of the animals, someone would have to die. And Yahusha chose to lay down his life and take it back up again. After today's session, it would be utterly impossible not to recognize that many pagan golden calves are worshipped by those that call themselves Christians. This was shared not to condemn, but to convict and awaken our brothers and sisters to the deceptions by the enemy, so that they may promptly obey to come out of her, my people. The road to regression is fueled by generationally programmed traditions of men, promoted by the enemy who rules the airwaves. The enemy has created a non-biblical virtual reality decked with glitter and fool's gold, men in red suits, men in rabbit suits, magic, castles, and fairies, each associated with merchandising, gifts, celebrations that are all leading to the great falling away. Unless true believers diligently seek his word, repent, and come out of her, like in the days of the divided kingdom, we are his modern day prophets reaching out to his people, Israel, to repent. So Shabbat Shalom. I pray this lesson has been a teaching that you will review, look into, search the scriptures. And remember Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. And this isn't only speaking of Jeremiah. Yes, it's speaking of Jeremiah in this particular verse, but that doesn't mean it excludes us. Before he formed us in the belly, he knew us. And before you came out of the womb, he did set you apart, and he appointed you a prophet to nations. Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom.